An ancient secret lurks in Sector Omega-9. Will the crew of the Aurora survive? Don't miss out on the best. Subscribe now to my YouTube channel and join this amazing community. Every week, new adventures, tips, and much more await you. Hit the subscribe button and activate the bell to stay always up to date. The Aurora sails through space in near absolute silence as it approaches Sector Omega-9. From the bridge, Captain Harrow watches the vast void speckled with stars, feeling the immensity of the unknown pressing on his chest. On his monitor, reports from the last few minutes flicker erratically, an early sign of the interference that would soon become more apparent. Alana, standing by the communications console, struggles to maintain the connection with Command Center. Captain, the signal is fading. The interference it's like something is absorbing the communications spectrum, she reports, trying to stay calm. Sam, from the engineering station, is also trying to make adjustments to stabilize the navigation systems, but the power charts start showing nonsensical spikes. It's like the ship itself is failing, but everything was in perfect condition just a few minutes ago, he comments in frustration. Dr. Kessler watches as the greenish mist surrounds the ship, tinting the space with a ghostly hue. She feels a chill run down her spine. It's as if the mist had a life of its own, she murmurs, barely aware that Harrow hears her. The captain watches her with curiosity and a hint of suspicion. He can't help but notice a slight tremor in her voice, as if she knows more than she's willing to admit. Suddenly, a distant echo breaks through the monitors, distorted and dark, like a strange, sinister melody. At first, it seems like ordinary interference, but soon it takes on a rhythm, a sort of message in an undecipherable language that none of the translation systems can understand. However, as Harrow listens to the transmission, one word forms in his mind: welcome. He says nothing, but in his thoughts, something eerily familiar resonates in that greeting. As the strange signal intensifies, the crew watches as the mist seems to twist around the ship. Sam comments quietly, "Captain, have you noticed how the mist seems to react to every maneuver? As if it were alive, as if it were watching us." Harrow nods, trying to remain calm, but he knows something is very wrong. In the distance, a colossal shape begins to become visible. It's not a star or an asteroid but an ancient, massive ship of a design unlike any human technology. The surface of the ship is covered in strange markings and symbols that seem to glow faintly in the gloom. Dr. Kessler gasps, and her voice trembles as she murmurs, "This isn't possible. That ship looks from another era, much older than anything we've ever seen." Alana tries to recalibrate the navigation systems to move away, but it's too late. The Aurora feels itself being pulled by an invisible force toward the unknown ship. The onboard systems begin to fail completely, leaving the crew in unsettling darkness. A supernatural cold spreads through the interior of the Aurora, and an ancient, deep voice begins to resonate in their minds, whispering in a language that none of them understand, yet it conveys a primal fear, something ancient. Each crew member feels their own mind invaded by this presence, as if it were touching their darkest memories and secrets. With the Aurora drifting and with no maneuverability, Harrow orders a boarding mission to the unknown ship. Clad in spacesuits and armed with energy weapons, Harrow, Alana, Sam, and Dr. Kessler cross the void to the mysterious ship. As they pass through the threshold, a strange sensation overtakes them. The atmosphere is dense and seems to vibrate, as if the ship's structure itself were breathing. The walls are covered in symbols that emit a faint glow, casting shadows that move almost imperceptibly. Alana runs her fingers over one of the symbols, feeling a static discharge, as if the ship responded to her touch. Do you feel that? It's like something is watching us from within these walls, she comments, and the others silently agree. In a large hall, they discover ancient carvings showing humanoid figures in rituals with cosmic forms. Dr. Kessler observes the carvings with fascination. This isn't just a ship, she murmurs almost to herself, this is a temple, dedicated to something greater, something they worshipped. Harrow watches her with a mixture of curiosity and distrust, sensing that Kessler knows more than she is revealing. As they move forward, the team begins to hear echoes of their own thoughts and memories, whispers arising from the darkness, repeating phrases from their past lives. Sam tries to ignore the voices, but a shadow of his childhood appears briefly in a corner. It can't be, he murmurs, confused and terrified. Alana, meanwhile, hears the voice of her deceased sister, calling her from the shadows. In a moment of desperation, Sam touches a panel on the wall and activates a holographic projection. The images show ancient rituals and sacrifices performed by beings that look similar to humans, though taller and thinner, with large, dark eyes. The figures are arranged in a circle around a giant, shapeless shadow that seems to absorb the light. Alana watches in horror. This isn't just a ship, she says in a trembling voice, it's a prison, and whatever's inside, it has found us. Returning to the Aurora, the team finds Dr. Verhoeven, who has been monitoring their vital signs. His expression is somber as he reveals that something in the ship has affected their minds. It's like it's playing with your thoughts, manipulating your memories. Your brainwaves are synchronized to a strange frequency, almost as if you shared a psychic connection, he explains. Dr. Kessler, in a moment of desperation, confesses the truth to the crew. She explains that she knew of the legend of an ancient entity, a primordial consciousness that existed before time itself. This being, it's not just a creature. It's a fragment of something greater, something that once was, and now is trapped between life and death, she says, her voice barely a whisper. The crew, especially Captain Harrow, feels betrayed and horrified by Kessler's secret, but there is no time to discuss it. The entity begins to manifest once more. The entity begins to take on a physical form within the Aurora, a being made of distorted shadows, flashes of light, and fragments of dark memories that seem to emanate from the depths of the crew's minds. With each step, the ship seems to lose temperature, and the lights flicker as if the creature itself were absorbing energy. Sam, terrified, tries to recalibrate the power systems, but finds the commands unresponsive. It's like it's feeding on the ship, on us, he murmurs, his voice filled with panic. Captain Harrow orders Alana and Sam to look for alternative solutions, but the entity is already inside their minds. Each begins to hear familiar voices, whispers reflecting their deepest insecurities and fears. Harrow sees a fleeting vision of his mother, an image from his childhood that makes him doubt his own reality. Sensing his vulnerability, the entity amplifies the memory, pushing him to a near-paralyzing anguish. Despite her own fear, Alana forces herself to think clearly. She proposes an idea: a reverse energy discharge from the emergency generator might temporarily cut the entity's connection to the ship, giving them a chance to escape. However, she knows the procedure requires a manual activation, and someone will have to face the entity directly in the engine room. Harrow's gaze hardens. He understands the risk, but he also knows it's their only chance. He looks at his team, now visibly suffering from the entity's mental invasion, and orders the maneuver, knowing everyone's survival is at stake. The path to the engine room is dark and hostile, every corner of the ship seeming deformed and sinister. The entity, aware of their plan, increases the mental pressure on the crew. Harrow and Alana press forward, but each step becomes a struggle against visions and fragments of their worst memories. The ship seems to expand and contract, as if the walls were breathing, and every shadow in the hallways seems to contain familiar yet unknown figures, shapes that represent their own fears. Sam, from the bridge, tries to protect his teammates by interfering with the entity, but soon realizes that his mental resistance is at its limit. The entity seizes on Sam's state of despair and projects a vision of his worst memory, a loss he had deeply buried in his mind. Reliving it, Sam begins to lose his sense of reality, feeling that past and present are blending into a spiral of suffering. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Dr. Verhoeven realizes that his own traumas and mistakes are being used against him. The entity manifests as an echo of his deceased daughter, projecting a harrowing vision of the night he lost her. Verhoeven, trapped between pain and despair, decides in a final act of bravery to sacrifice himself, giving Captain Harrow and Alana the time they need to initiate the energy pulse. In his last moments, Verhoeven whispers words of farewell to his daughter as her image fades and the entity focuses on him, temporarily abandoning the rest of the crew. In the engine room, Harrow and Alana, with trembling hands, manage to activate the emergency generator and begin configuring the reverse energy pulse. The entity, sensing the threat, shifts its attention back to them. Its form begins to expand and suddenly takes on a colossal shape, a visual representation of pure energy and shadows with glowing eyes, filled with hatred and despair. Harrow and Alana feel the overwhelming presence as if the entity were trying to seize control of their thoughts and bodies. As the ship shakes and quakes violently, Alana is hit by an energy shock that knocks her to the ground, weakened. The entity seems to project her darkest memories, every failure, every loss, every moment of doubt amplified to the limit. Harrow, feeling his own mental resistance beginning to collapse, summons his last strength and drags himself to the generator, where he makes a final adjustment. In a desperate last effort, he activates the energy pulse, releasing a surge that floods the ship. The entity screams, an inhuman, wrenching sound that fills every corner of the Aurora. Its eyes, like dying stars, slowly dim, and its form begins to fragment, disintegrating into the air. The unknown ship, which had remained silent for millennia, also begins to collapse, as if the bond that kept it whole had been destroyed. Finally, the Aurora is freed and left drifting in space, damaged and exhausted but free from the entity's influence. After the confrontation, the Aurora is left adrift, and the remaining crew tries to process Dr. Verhoeven's sacrifice and the traumatic experience they've just survived. Harrow, exhausted and emotionally broken, checks on his teammates, each affected in a different way. Alana, pale and visibly shaken, remains silent, avoiding eye contact with the captain. Sam, who seems to have partially regained his sanity, works on the ship's systems, trying to stabilize them as his hands tremble slightly. Harrow feels a weight on his chest, a sense of emptiness he cannot explain solely by physical exhaustion. As he watches the remnants of the cosmic mist disperse, he realizes that something in them has changed forever. Each crew member is marked by the experience, as if the entity had left an indelible imprint on their minds. Dr. Kessler, who seems to have been the most affected, spends long hours in the lab, reviewing the data she has collected. The monitors show inexplicable anomalies in their brainwave readings, as if a part of the entity had been imprinted on their minds. Analyzing these findings, Kessler faces a moral dilemma. Should she hide what they know to protect humanity, or share the truth, even knowing it might unleash something much worse? As the Aurora slowly pulls away from Sector Omega-9, the crew attempts to repair the systems and recover psychologically. However, one final message appears on the monitors, a message everyone immediately recognizes: welcome. This time, the tone is different. It's not a threat but something resembling a farewell, as if the entity acknowledged its defeat but also its own liberation. Captain Harrow watches the screen in silence, understanding that they may have released something that was meant to remain asleep. He feels a knot in his stomach, remembering the look of hatred in the entity's eyes, a look he now understands as a reflection of his own inner darkness, of the secrets and traumas each of them had tried to bury. This mission has changed them in ways they cannot yet fully comprehend, and Harrow fears the consequences will haunt them for the rest of their lives. As the ship ventures into space, Alana, who had maintained her composure until now, breaks the silence. "Do you think we're safe, Captain?" Harrow, without answering immediately, stares into the cosmic void, the stars flickering indifferently to their questions. Finally, he murmurs, "I don't know. Sometimes, I think there are things in the universe that we simply shouldn't wake." As he gazes at the stars, Harrow realizes that this encounter has altered his perspective on the universe and on himself. The entity has left a seed of doubt in their minds, a dark echo that will resonate in their deepest thoughts. He knows that part of the entity still lives within them, a shadow they may never fully shake, and that the Aurora will carry that memory with it wherever fate may lead them. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and comment.